All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Welcome to the Osceola Board of Education regular school board meeting for Wednesday, January 29th, 2025. Start with a roll call. Teresa? Yes. Roy? Yes. Jan? Yes. Corey? Yep. And myself. Item B is public comment. Welcome you all to the meeting tonight. Before we begin public comment, I'd like to outline the rules and guidelines for public comments. These rules are designed to ensure that the public comment period is productive, respectful, and orderly. Each speaker will have a maximum of 5 minutes. We expect all speakers and attendees to maintain a respectful and courteous tone during their comments. Personal attacks, disrespectful language, or disruptive behavior are unacceptable. Public comments should relate to matters that fall within the jurisdiction of the school. Please avoid any confidential information. There will be no questions or debate. Public comment is an opportunity for you to express your views, but it is not a forum for back and forth discussion or questions. We value your input and appreciate your cooperation in following these guidelines. Now it looks like we have one person, and that looks to be Teresa IQ with school choice budget. If you would come up to the podium, that would be great.
Good evening. Once again, thank you to the board for all your important work and what you've done. Today I brought a chart that was created and released by the Badger Institute. It has some really important graphics. If you see the red line is enrollment in public schools across the state. The blue line and the yellow line show enrollment in parent, private choice, and independent charter schools. When you do the math and you add these two top lines and separate it from the bottom, what you realize that only 25% of the red line is due to birth rate. Only 25% is due to birth rate. And if anybody wants a question, I've got 2 extra copies on this. The rest of the enrollment decline across the state is because parents are choosing to walk away from public education. And what our district needs to do is ask why. Why are parents leaving? And this, yes, is statewide. It's very hard to create this data. It gut checks with what we've seen, or at least what I've been seeing in our community. Why are people leaving? And I am guessing this is probably because of the academic performance that was released recently. And parents are just sick of fighting and they're walking away. They're sick of the woke ideologies that are in our school and the undermining of parental rights. Parents are just sick of fighting. Parents have brought to these meetings that they're sick of woke DEI curriculums. They're sick of being attacked online or in the community. They don't want their children weaponized. It's just easier to walk away. We want our kids to be able to read, write, and perform math at a proficiency that prepares them for college or the workforce. It doesn't require any of the woke content that goes away or goes against our faith-based standards or morality that should just be left at home. Let's talk about performance. I receive a call almost every week from a parent in tears. This week I had a call for 2 hours with a parent who found out that her child was failing catastrophically. And she goes, the test results weren't released to me. I know that as a district we can't release those test results, but if you are the content level standard and you have a child failing catastrophically, you should be able to recognize that in your classroom, and you should be reaching out to the parents and creating a plan. This parent should not be hearing about it 18 months after the fact. That should be a gut check with those curriculum leaders. If a kid can't read in the first month of school, That is the time to create the plan, not when that student is graduated into another classroom. We are in January, almost February, and that parent just found out. Don't hide behind the test results. Trust your instincts and partner with parents. Because right now, according to the test results, 2/3 of our students across the state are failing catastrophically. And it is your obligation as a district to create a plan. Last time we met in this room, maybe it's time to reconsider homework. Look at what worked in this district in the 90s. Look at what content is needed for those kids to read and write and do math. We need to concentrate on those areas rather than some of the junk and garbage that has been presented in our classrooms. That red line, that should be a wake-up call, because that's what's going to keep the lights on in this building, and only 25% of that is birth rate. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, item 2 is the consent agenda. You already have that before you. What would be your wishes? Motion by Corey, second by Jan. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed would be nay. That is approved. Item 3, aligning and developing our facilities to best meet educational safety and security goals. Item A is presentation of the 24-25 financial audit.
Cheyenne, are you there?
Cheyenne, can you talk again?
Can you hear me?
Now we can.
We have Baker Tilly on tonight, Cheyenne, and I think Vanessa's on as well, right?
Correct.
Vanessa was, Vanessa and her team were the ones that performed the field work, as the board is aware. It was a new audit team this year, and I can say from my perspective that it was amazing, and I couldn't be more happy that we made the switch. So with that said, I'll just let them do the summary audit. This isn't a document that the board isn't used to seeing. This is kind of what we get each time that we get an audit overview. So I'll just turn it over to them.
All right, thank you. Can you hear me okay? Okay, I'm getting a little bit, let's try to ignore it. All right, well, thank you, and really glad to have this opportunity to present to you all, and thank you for the opportunity to be virtual. Vanessa and I are in the Eau Claire area, so it's a little bit of a drive if we were over, but certainly, in the future, if you would prefer in person, we can make that happen too. So, I guess to start off, I'll introduce myself. I am Sheena Heidegger. I am the principal with Baker Tilly, and I did oversee this first year audit of this Osceola School District. With me is Vanessa Kane, who, as was mentioned, did a lot of the heavy lifting here, did a lot of the communication with Shannon and staff. So I do want to just start off saying thank you for bringing us into the district, and just a big thank you to Shannon and the staff. A first year audit is very time consuming on them. It's a heavier lift in year one, but going forward, we have very high hopes that things will go smoothly. And we're hoping that the time that we spent with Shannon and others was valuable to you, and is going to make the fiscal 25 audit just that much better too. Tonight we are presenting draft financial statements, so I just want to put this disclaimer out right away. Things are not finalized. We are waiting on the final OPEB study to be able to wrap everything up. But the fund numbers that I'm going to go over here shortly, we're not anticipating those to change, but we do have the final levels of review and such on our end too. So this is as good of a draft as we could give at this point. We do intend to issue 3 reports, hopefully sooner than later, and that will be the financial statements, which includes our audit opinion. We will have the report on federal and state awards, and then the audit results letter, which is just a report to you as the board and to management, summarizing how the audit went and any required communications. So we did provide this handout for tonight to go over a very high level summary of the audit and the fiscal 24 results. I'm not going to read through this whole top section, but just to briefly cover Baker Tilly's responsibilities, so us as your auditors, we are hired to issue an audit opinion. So we perform our procedures to determine if the financial statements are presented fairly in accordance with GAAP, that you have maintained controls over that financial reporting, and then ultimately to express that opinion. We do intend to issue an unmodified opinion at this point, and that would be the highest level you can receive, but it's a clean opinion. So that would be stating that the financial statements are fairly stated. And our audit does provide a reasonable, not absolute assurance that those financial statements do not contain a material misstatement. So what that means is we're sampling transactions. We're picking things to look at based on our risk assessments, based on our knowledge of Wisconsin school districts, and then the auditing standards. So we are not looking at everything, not every transaction of the district. And the second part of this longer paragraph is the responsibilities of those charged with governance, so you as the school board, and management's responsibilities. The financial statements are the responsibility of management for preparing and fairly presenting those. You as the board are charged with overseeing the financial reporting process, discussing any significant internal control matters, and informing us as the auditors of any fraud or suspected fraud. And we do talk with members of management, members of staff, and the board annually to ask those pointed questions. Those are standard audit requirements, so not that we feel there was any fraud or suspected any fraud, but it's just part of every year's questions. Management also needs to provide us with unrestricted access to individuals and information, and we did not encounter any difficulties with getting that information or obtaining that access. So ultimately, other than first year challenges, just getting to know your processes, getting to know your people, the audit has gone smoothly. So I will cover some of these numbers next, some of the financial highlights. Starting out with the general fund. Within your district, your general fund is probably one of the most important metrics to look at to assess the financial health of the district. Your general fund balance can be categorized in up to 5 categories. At the end of fiscal 24, the district did have amounts in these 3 categories of committed, assigned, and unassigned. The committed balances are those which you as the board have taken formal action to commit these funds to be used for a specific purpose. That roughly $433,000 is set aside for the agriculture program. The assigned balance is also monies that you've set aside for designated purposes, but they don't have that formal board action that has been taken to put those aside. So the assigned balance, about 1.3 million, is the amount that was needed to balance your fiscal 25 budget, so intended fund balance usage in the next year. And then unassigned is the residual positive fund balance that we use for operations and any future needs. So that was 5.5 million at year end. So total fund balance at the end of fiscal 24 is looking to be about 7.3 million for the general fund. Continuing down there on this to look at the chart, one of the measures of adequacy of that fund balance is looking at how much do you have in reserves in comparison to your year's worth of expenditures. So general fund expenditures for fiscal '24, but 20.7 million, and comparing to that unassigned fund balance of 5.5 million, equates to about 27% of your expenditures are in reserves if needed. That translates to just over 3 months of reserves on hand. In this chart below, there's the red line, and that is the GFOA recommended minimum would be 2 months, so about 16-17%. So with the district being trending above that line, that does show that we are at an adequate fund balance. The district also has a policy to maintain that fund balance from 20 to 30%. So again, with that 26%, you are in line with the district's policy. Right, the next page then, looking at first the general fund summarized income statement, so the revenues and expenses that fed into changes to that fund balance this year. The first column here, we have the budgeted amount, so what you planned to have happen was about $1 million net income. And then the middle column is the 2024 actual, so your fund balance did increase almost $812,000. And then just 2023 there on the end for comparison. There are details by function in the draft financial statements, and again, that will be part of the final financial statements too when they are issued. But really the change from your budget to your actual, the revenues are under budget there, you can see, but about $215,000 of unavailable revenue at year end. So it's grant expenditures that you spent in fiscal '24, but the reimbursement didn't happen soon enough after year end. So those actually will be 2025 revenues. So it's basically a timing difference and an accounting policy to have to put that revenue into the next fiscal year, but it is to reimburse your 2024 expenses. All right, then we have just a few other high-level metrics here. Looking at cash and investments for all funds. Looking at cash, 3-year trend, it has been declining, the unrestricted cash, but really the jump from 2023 to 24 was just paying down debt, the scheduled payments, and using some of those cash reserves that were in the debt service fund. The employee benefit trust is the OPEB trust, and uses of that are very limited based on the plans. Looking at special revenue funds, so some of the other activities of the district outside of the general fund, the educational trust, the food service, and the 4 funds there that make up community service programs. Really not very significant changes there. Nothing much to highlight. In the debt service fund, again, you can see the fund balance went from about $1 million in '23 down to $42,000 in 2024. Again, that was using cash reserves to pay down the debt. The levy amount in there was not enough to cover the debt payments for the year, so that brings the fund balance down. And then on the capital projects, in the last 2 years, no significant capital projects happening, so those fund balances have remained pretty steady. And then the final metric here is looking at some long-term debt metrics. We've got outstanding general obligation debt at the end of 2024, about $5.3 million. There was no new debt issued, so the decrease from the prior year was just scheduled debt payments. And then the debt capacity, which is 10% of the equalized value, of $159 million. That's seeing a nice increasing trend as property values go up. So the district has used about 3.3% of the debt limit. So in a good position, we're not highly leveraged in debt or anything. And then the last metric here is looking at how much debt service you're paying in comparison to the rest of the non-capital expenditures. Just a little while ago, I noted that that 10.3% that's showing for 2024 is actually incorrect. It should be 7.4%, 7.5%. So actually a little bit lower than the previous year. And what that means is your principal and interest that you're paying in comparison to the rest of the operating expenses of the district are only about 7.5%. Again, we have a benchmark there on that red line. Bond rating agencies, if you were to be going out for rated bonds, they like to see that percentage be no higher than 20%. So, the district hovering around that 7 to 9% is a very strong metric to have. So, good trends there. All right, and then I just wanted to touch briefly on the third report I mentioned, the federal and state award expenditures report, single audit report. There again, this is in draft form, but at this point, we do anticipate issuing modified opinions over the controls and compliance for federal and state programs. We do have 4 program findings that will be reported, 2 around the child nutrition cluster and 2 around school-based services, the Medicaid cluster. These aren't, I would say they're not uncommon to see some of these issues. None of the findings resulted in an inappropriate use of the funds, no ineligible expenditures, mostly just around controls that are in place and just buttoning up some policies and procedures. So with that, I would open it up for any questions and that anyone may have.
Any questions?
No, but, I'm sorry, this is Jen Frost. When do you guys think the final audit report will be issuable?
I can take that, Jan. We're waiting on the OPEB. The OPEB
Thanks,
study. She had asked about when the final audit would be reported, and we're really, the last piece is the OPEB study. We were thinking this week we would get it. I'm thinking maybe early next week we'll get it. And then from there, they can issue their final report.
But is it that our preliminary needs to be filed with the state? Is that, no?
It's done, everything's filed.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
that's been done,
Yeah.
whereas in the past it hasn't been done according to the
Correct.
deadline. Okay.
Yeah, and we've been in communication with DPR and we're aware of where things are at.
Awesome.
Keeping in contact.
She's been in touch with DPI and they know where things are. Questions? I don't see any.
Just wanna thank you guys again. It was a great process.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you again to everybody and then we'll be in touch with
Thank you.
additional items that we do.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your work.
Yeah, and the whole thing, yes. Oh, I just put turning the volume down thinking maybe this
I felt like I was at like an Arby's, right?
is
So large fry.
She just kept telling you numbers. All right, next item then is item B, district self-insurance update.
We bring, this is a cyclical thing, we bring insurance before the board each year, and this year we are gonna go a little bit more in depth than we have in the past, so we're just gonna give a little background of where we are since we've become self-insured. You have a little bit of why Osceola moved to self-insurance. I think you guys are aware that most of you were here, I think, when they made that transition. Right now, the balance that we have in our self-funded accounts is a little over 2 million, according to our, insurance friends at, SF Insurance. This is an excellent, amount to have. They usually say you should have about 1 month's worth of coverage, and right now we probably have about 2.5 to 3. So, this is in part largely because our employees have been excellent consumers. This allows the balance to increase. And there, basically what we're saying is, what we're taking in premiums, we're not paying out in claims as much. That's how you achieve those balances. This comes with that consumerism piece. So what we have then below that is what we, premium responsibility for the employees for the last 3 years, and then what we're looking at for 25-26. We also then show what we've had for the deductibles. As you can see, last year in that 24-25, we moved towards that embedded with the 3,500, 7,000 on the family plan. Last year, or this year, I should say, in 24-25, the employee's portion was 1,124 for a family and 494 for a single. That's for the entire year. So to break that down by a month, we divide that out by 12. Our recommendation for 25-26 is that we take a recommend it for the insurance company at about a 6% increase. So that equates out to an additional 47 per family per year, and then 29.69 for the single plan. Any questions? Becky, did you have anything?
I just think it's important to look at the number of family plans, the number of single, and we just really wanted you to see the numbers, because we want to be as open as possible, as communicating.
So currently, and this changes, right? So, the amount that we have on family and the amount that we have on single, that can change from month to month. So, again, it's a snapshot in time. So when we put this information together, we have 119 family and 50 single. You can see the total increase cost would be about 180,000 total for the year.
Right, I think that's super important when you see insurance is super important. It's great to keep people employed, and the district's cost, that's on top of what we've already paid. So that's really important to note, and that's why we're putting numbers out there.
The 180 is
Our cost.
the district's cost.
Increased
Not-
cost.
yeah, okay.
The second piece of the conversation that we wanted to bring forward tonight is, because we have seen that excellent use of consumerism within the plan, we'd like to take the opportunity to present to the board and we'll take this year by year. It's not going to be in perpetuity right now, but this for 25-26, we'd like to ask the board to consider increasing the contribution we make to the health savings account for the family and for the single. We have a little bit of history there, what the contributions have been. After 15-16, it's remained the same, so it's been about $450 for a single, $900 for a family. We're asking that we do an additional $750 for the family and an additional $400 for the single for the 25-26 school year.
I think there's the two examples. There's a 500 there, and then there's a 250. And Shannon and I highlighted what we would prefer if we could support our staff, or being, and again, be one time, because we don't know where we would be with self-insured. Because the beauty of self-insured, right, is that we would have the flexibility to do something like this, not asking for action now, but really wanted to bring it forward. And then,
Just a few more data points down there, then the summary total would be, the family for 25-26 contribution would be $1,650, and then a single would be $850. A few other facts that we have: many people don't take insurance, roughly 29. We have 15 staff that take in lieu of. That's not something we no longer offer, but if you had it, you were grandfathered in. And then we have 8 staff that are covered under spousal insurance. The total impact for the balance that we would have, that self-funded balance would be, I'll just go to the grand total that we would get back to the insured employees of roughly $110,000. Again, we're not looking for action tonight, we're just something for the board to consider.
Exciting to see this play out, as this is
Yep.
newer to us,
Yeah.
this is what we wanted.
Yep. And it's, you know, it can change very fast, and that's why I think that we're taking this cautious approach to, we'll take a look at it 1 year at a time and see how the plan is performing. And there's a stop loss part of our insurance, right, so if there's a catastrophic event, that's built into the plan. Again, looking at a way to take care of our people, is what why we're bringing that forward, because they're definitely being excellent consumers. Any additional information you would like about self-insurance that would be helpful?
That would bring us to item C then, which is first readings of policy 8407.
So shared with you is, policy 8407, which we do not have. It's for a school resource officer program. So as you know, with Neola, it gives you a bunch of choices to go through and decide. The admin team did go through it, and we went yes to all A through I. Makes sense, that's what we would want as far as a SRO, and the questions that, so I mean, obviously you all would need to agree with that, but on I, it talks about requirement that the law enforcement agency provide to the district administrator or board an annual report regarding the SRO program. I would assume it would come to you all. Yes? Okay, all right. And then the next one is this report shall summarize activities conducted throughout the previous school year and shall include recommendations for the upcoming school year. Yes? I assume. And then the board may request additional updates or reports.
Yeah.
Is there any other thoughts, wonders, worries, concerns, something that's not here, something that should be?
Is this policy similar to other neighboring ones with SROs?
Yeah, it comes right from Neola, and these are the choices. So Neola districts, people that use Neola, yes. People who use WASB have maybe more, maybe less, depending on. And I think important on the backside, right, the confidential information, student records and information, it's real. Like, there's a difference what a law enforcement person has access to and what we do. So that's very clear here, and I appreciate that.
So you have first reading of this policy, it'll come back for a second reading, so as you chew on it, you now know where the admin, what options they've chosen, so you have some time to chew on it and bring forward any questions, comments, concerns before the next meeting. Sound good? All right, that brings us to item D, review and approve the school resource officer proposal for the 25-26 school year.
So we talked about this, I think our last committee meeting, we went over the proposal, and one thing that you wanted added, so added the wage section in. And again, this is based on estimates that the Osceola Police Department gave us. So the math is there, so 261 days versus 71 days, 190, like, remember the school year, 190 is our portion. And then they have a 261 day contract, so they would be employing the person for 71 days. And again, this depends on how we collaborate if we move forward with the Osceola Police Department, and if they want to post for a full-time officer, or if they want to post for 190 days. In my conversations with the police chief, it sounds like they've met with their finance people, and they would be looking for a full-time officer because they see a huge benefit for the school portion, but also for the summer, for overtime, to be able to have that person available.
Have we taught that community or the team that what buildings we would expect the SRO to be in?
And that's part of what's in the policy. So the policy says that it'll be assigned to all buildings. So, and how the administrative team decides to do that, that best serves, the intent is that the officers in all buildings according to what the policy says. It's the how and what it looks like. And then you can see the items to complete. I'm sure this is not a comprehensive list, other things will pop up. Right, because even creating, the job posting and description, right? All of these places that helped us out with samples of their MOUs have shared job descriptions as well. But that's a collaborative process that you develop with the police department that you partner with. And then another conversation, just to be totally open, is that if it's posted here and we don't get any applicants, then do we ask the county to post as well and potentially partner with them? So that may be, I just want you to know that that is a conversation that came up at the leadership table today. And we want to ensure that if we move forward, we fill the spot.
So the wage part is the Osceola Police Department, so it'd be different if we ended up with the county.
My understanding from the sheriff is
They're
pretty similar, and it depends on how much experience the officer has that you're hiring. So there's all of these variables. So that's what's tricky about this. Like, I would like to be able to say, okay, it's anywhere between this and this, but I don't feel like I have a good understanding. And is it mostly rookie officers that want like SRO jobs? Is it mid? I don't know.
And there's no grant available this year, correct?
Wow.
Or have
Well,
we?
as of today, I had one of my grant friends email me and say, I think the COPS grant is open again. So that is something to look into, of course, absolutely. And actually emailed Tammy Baldwin's people that said would help us with grants, and she sent me 3 other links and said you may be able to access it through the school safety part too. So we have 2 options to look for. That's super important. So please, yeah, and I didn't put that on here and I should have, so. Yeah. Well, I guess I do have grant funding opportunities on the checklist.
That's good news though. Very.
Yeah, that would be very helpful.
I know, I think the last time we talked, we didn't think it was gonna be available, so.
With the previous time that we looked at the grant, was it, just trying to remember, it was like a one-time, and was there a stipulation then, or?
I'm not gonna remember it by heart, but
No.
it was like a 3-year going slow, and then it becomes full. I wanna say it was 25% the first year split, but I would not at all bet money on that.
That's good. Thank you. So this, is a review and approve item. So board, what is your wishes?
I'll make the motion to go ahead with the school resource officer.
Motion by Jan?
Mhm.
It's a motion by Jan,
Second.
second by Corey. Any further discussion? Thank you, Becky Shannon, for your work on this.
Thank you for the support. It will be a very good thing for our school district and our students.
All right. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed would be nay. That is approved. That leads us to item 4, school board committee report. Item A is the state education convention review. Brooke, as your first time at the convention, tell us what you thought.
Well, I got to spend a good chunk of my time at the convention, in the delegate assembly. I liked it a lot. Hearing how passionate people were on either side of the resolutions, that was probably my favorite part. I would ask to do that job again and sit there for the 4 or 5 hours that it was. Kaisa and I also got to listen to.
Recording.
Yeah. I volunteered. Kaisa and I also got to listen to the SRO session, which was enlightening. Lots about climate and culture with the addition of an SRO, so. Yeah, I was excited to be there.
I mean, I always like things like that because I like to network with other people, get to know other people, hear what their stories are, their districts, their community stories are, and realize we aren't much different than a lot of these other districts out there, and then brainstorming with them. Like sometimes you go into a some of these conferences, and some of them are awesome, and then some of them are not exactly what you're looking for. And you might be like I got to sit next to a guy in one of them, and we were both like, I won't say which one, but there was one that was not hitting all the things I was hoping he would hit. It was more of a basic deal, and him and I were just chatting, and so many similarities, like with the budgeting issues and just, you know, all the good stuff, right? And those conversations to me are like important, because then we can kind of share with each other like things that our district has gone through or steps that they've tried, and just trying to learn from each other. So, and then we had some good guest speakers, and the governor showed up for this 44th year in a row, or 43rd or 44th year in a row.
43rd.
So yeah, it's a good time. So.
Do you wanna show the audience what you brought back?
Oh yeah. So we had a presentation from a gentleman, Sam Glenn, and he's an artist, and he didn't like to be called a motivational speaker, but he really is, and he's really positive, and he talks about a lot of things he's got like a story, right? So he has this canvas on there, it's got like a dark background, you can kind of tell it's gonna be a wolf, and he's finishing painting it. But he's got a ton of these other pictures of these trees, right? Like this here. He's got many different versions of it, and whatever. So he had this one on stage, and he's signed it, and he tells us it's like appraised at $2,000 and whatever, and he's like, who wants it? And everyone raises their hand, and then he's like, well, whoever gets the trivia question right. And people that know me know that if there's ever a trivia contest, they want me on their team, because I never remember any important information. But you ask a dumb trivia question, I'm probably gonna know it anyway. And his question was, what's the toy that was first advertised like on American TV? And I tell Brooke, who's sitting right next to me, I'm like, Mr. Potato Head. And everyone else is guessing, they're Swinky and Silly Putty, and no one's saying it. And after a while, he like looks at me, and I'm just like, it's Mr. Potato Head, and whatever. So he's like, all right, and he sets it down, and he's like, in 30 seconds after I'm done with this, make sure you come up here and get this, otherwise everyone's gonna come up and grab it. But the whole message behind that is, you see all those lines and stuff down there. I guess let me just sum it up by saying you grow through what you go through, right? So all that stuff on the bottom is just all the things that we just go through in life. And you gotta break that little barrier up there to perspective, whatever. And to really blossom, right? And it's this message that he gives. And the guy was just fun to listen to. And it's one of those that when he's done talking, you just feel like you just want to do good things, you know? And so I win that, and since I've been on this board, and bless the heart of the interior designer, but I had to look at that area over there.
Part of it's gone.
Part of it's gone today, but they had this plant in the one, and it looked like something was puking. It's always bothered me. But that's going to replace that area over there. And I'm so excited for it. But no, that was a great, like he was there for an hour talking. And he was like a combination of my favorite Jim Carrey and like Jim Gaffigan and Brian Regan. Like these three comedians, like how they talked and did stuff. So.
And he's from Stillwater, Minnesota.
Yeah,
so
Stillwater and
really
Hudson
cool.
connection. And
yeah. And I kept leaning to Corey saying, you could do this job. Like you have the same comedic ability. And he kept going to me, I can't paint. We can teach you how to paint, I think.
I'll stick people. And then talk for an hour about that.
It was amazing to hear his perspective on education and the impact education has. And he was all over the place, from some deep intense ones and some school seminars and
Stories from his grandfather's dad.
yep, and just all over. And then at the end of it, it was that the message was the pack is only as strong as the wolf, and the wolf is only as strong as the pack. And that was the take home message. It really resonated with a lot of us, so it was a good one. So.
His other thing he said with that painting, because all the stripes at the bottom was turning messes into masterpieces.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think of the work we're doing in this room, all of these things. I also learned, because we sat in the third row, and I don't like doing that, but these kids are like, oh, let's go sit up front, let's go sit up front. Sometimes it does pay to sit up front. Probably one of the most impactful speakers I've ever been to. I am just very thankful that we were allowed to go. And Miss Jan, our troublemaker, sometimes, but, I mean down in Milwaukee, but there was no Harley Davidson this year.
Yeah. I will say it's awkward walking into your hotel with a huge thing like that and everyone's staring at you thinking you probably just ripped it off of the wall.
Well, we were in an art hotel.
Yeah, and it was an art hotel, so it literally looks like I'm stealing stuff from where I'm staying, so. That's fine, I only got arrested twice.
There's so many different choices, so I mean, I was trying to look through my notes. You know, the SRO sessions, declining enrollment sessions, legal sessions, uplifting sessions.
There was one about like your voice, like the 5 different kind of voices, and it was about like teamwork and how to understand your board and stuff. So like, if I am one voice, how I would understand someone that has this voice, like, and you kind of learn like, who are you least compatible with, but what can you get from that person that has that kind of voice? That to me, that was my favorite one, because I always felt like I'm a good reader of like people, but then I'm like, oh yeah, there's still like there's a lot still out there to learn, and gave me some new perspective on.
But then to have also follow up those conversations with neighboring districts, and it's just so powerful.
I got to have a conversation one-on-one with Jill Underly, the state superintendent, and advocate for Osceola. And I probably had 5-8 minutes to sit and talk with her about the things that are happening here and the needs that our district has. And then her deputy state superintendent, I bumped into at another session, and he said, oh yeah, Jill was telling me she just talked to you. And we were up there, and I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, we love Osceola Fairchild. Shoot. Here I thought it was so close. So I still have had correspondence with her since, and you know, she's so passionate. She kept saying that this was the year of the kid, this was the year of the student, this is the year of the child. All of those were used interchanged, and the governor said the same message. And I think it's really easy to lose that. That is what we're here for. And so to be refocused and revitalized on that, nothing fills that bucket more than when these amazing bands come out and play, and watching the sheer giddiness that comes from this lady about the music and the students and how passionate they are. And I love watching the artwork get awarded from the students that compete to have their artwork displayed. And then this was the first year that we did an all board chair session. So all the board presidents or chairs all came together in the same room. And it was just stemming from one school district that was like, we should all talk at least once a year and say, you know, what's working, what isn't, what are the obstacles. We didn't really get a lot of time to free talk, but I got to connect with some of the board chairs locally, which was really nice to do. And so I enjoyed that. So I appreciate the opportunity to go and learn and connect and network.
And pens.
And pens. Jan's got a bag that we brought back for her, so. Jan, Becky, you guys went down before us and had some education.
Yeah, I, like y'all, feel connections with people matter. I made it a little awkward, Jan, so that podcast that I like, I emailed the guy, and so then we emailed, and so then we were doing a video call, and I said something about my podcast boyfriend, and then I met him face to face. I'm like, I promise I will not say that out loud in public, because I talk about my research boyfriends, and I talk about, yeah, well, that's not what I meant, but I did get an opportunity to meet him, and he is a brilliant individual who is not connected to public education, who researches education, which was fantastic for me to listen to and watch and learn from. And then I also was able to be reunited with all of my first year superintendents, because if you remember, this is my second year doing this job only, from last year. And that was very powerful to see where we've all been and where we're all going. And then attending the finance sessions is heartbreaking. It was it was the first time ever in my career that I heard people talk about, you know, these rural districts really need to start talking about consolidating. And I've never heard that in a presentation before. And then I was able to sit with 2 superintendents who have it on the ballot. And how does that impact your taxpayers? And where is the high school gonna go? And the love that people have and the pride in their communities and how they don't wanna let that go. But our system is so broken that people have to choose between their taxes and a high quality education. And I mean, it was gut-wrenching. mentioned, to sit in so many sessions and have that be said over and over. It was to the point, much like court, I had to stop the finance sessions and go to some student focused sessions, because that's why I'm here. But my brain kept going to that other piece, and it was powerful, but even when you look at the choices, so many finance compared to last year. I wanted to actually get the data and see if they were the same, or if that's just a different lens that I look through now. So, cause there's another 91 referendums on the ballot. So we just came from 80%, now we have another 91 that are on the ballot for April. It's
Are
right.
they all operational? Or
I have to look. I just learned that from my podcast boyfriend. And yeah, so it's a powerful event with people who are in there. We may all have different political views, but when it comes to education, people have that solid floor, and that was pretty great.
I probably did the opposite. I probably went to every finance one that I could have, just trying to super sleuth and see if they had any information. We're trying to all gain information about what the state's gonna do. So, while I was hoping that there would be some revelations, there weren't. I mean, it was, again, depressing, and they just don't know. There's many different asks. We've heard, full revenue ceiling being raised to $12,650, $12,000. We've heard, special education reimbursement at 60%, 40%, 100%. So I really utilized the time to try to see if, and talking with colleagues to see what are you doing? How are you building your budgets? Because, as you guys know, we've talked about for months, we're building it at basically zero base and not doing anything. So just really utilizing that time to see what my colleagues are doing in regards to that, and it's sad. And, there's maybe the one, I was talking about today, there's maybe 1 out of 5 conversations that I had where there was a business manager said, yeah, well, I built mine on an increase of X amount of dollars. That's because if I, if they do pull back on anything, I can pull it from here or here. Well, 90% of us don't have that ability. We're already deficit spending, so. Hopefully we have answers soon. So it's good to be, the closer you are to Madison, the more you hear, so.
I was genuinely surprised how many self-funded health insurance seminars they were, and I was really proud of our district for being ahead of that. And a lot of compliments on things Osceola was doing right from a board perspective, from admin, from our student success, test scores. It was pretty cool to be a part of. So. Also humbling to hear, that inner city Milwaukee struggling with guns and metal detectors, and all of that puts it into perspective for us that we're very lucky. We really are. So yeah. Thank you for the opportunity.
That's great.
That leads us to our board workshop review from last night. And 2 weeks ago. Yep. So we have been working with Teamworks to develop some board work, reviewing governance and our roles in governance for the district, and then working on developing a school board handbook and norms. And last night was kind of the wrap up of it. Had some good takeaways. I'm trying to think what all we wrote. It's good to go through some examples of governance. It's good to define governance and remember that our role as a group of 5, we have no power as 1, we have power as 5. But our governance role and management are very different things. And so I think, I certainly don't want to speak for all of us, but we all were refocused on the remembrance of, it's so easy to get lost in the details, but that is truly what management is. What is the role, our governance role is very different. So it's different than a town board, it's different than, the way our government is set up. It is essentially a checks and balances per se of, yes, that sounds great, now management make it happen. And it's always good to have an outside person come in and go over things through their lens for our district as well, so.
There were some seminars or whatever you call it, convention focused on that too. Because we are in a very unique position in this role.
So, still have some work to do on the board handbook and things to finish up. We've got some timelines before us to try to finish, but what else from teamwork, friends?
And you know, like I said last night, it's a nice reminder of what we're really in this for. And getting that board member book down will be nice too, because a lot of people that come into this position think you can do this, this, and this, and this. In reality, it's like, no, this is what you can do. Like, there's a lot of confusion out there, which what people think the board has the power to do. And this will help clear it up for some of that stuff too, so.
Well, and as I mentioned last night, there are seminars on how the board can improve student success scores down in Milwaukee, and I kept thinking, I don't think that's correct. I don't think that's correct. I think what we've been learning in our teams work session is not exactly that. And I asked it yesterday, and he said, no, the way that your board operates has an effect on culture and management and things like that. But the board's job is to support Becky and management and the admin team in removing barriers. And removing a barrier has a direct correlation on student scores. But us five together truly have no ability to control test scores. And so to remember that, and it's so much more than test scores, it's number of days kids come to school, and it is what activities they're participating in, and all of that, because our end goal is creating amazing human beings that can go out and change the world and represent our community. So, yeah, such renewed focus. It's good to fill the cup. So, yeah. Anything else on this one? No? All right. That brings us to item 5, which is engage in continuous improvement of student support systems and programs. A is review the second Friday in January pupil count.
Okay, this should look familiar because it's almost a duplicate of what we did in September. So remember, we have 2 times a year that we grab how many students we have in seats, and remember there's adjusted head count, there's head count. So generally what we talk about here is the head count, the big white words that are there. So the head count is 1414. So I know you're wondering, well, what was it in September? It was 1417. So we have 3 different, and I also want to point out at the bottom, so when we talk about declining enrollment, you can see us in 1920 at 1682, then 1533, 1592, 1572, 1502, and 1414. But I'm gonna add a supplement to this before we go to the approval. So, okay, that's totally fine. Actually, you guys have it on your table, so we can,
Oh, is it this one? No. Oh, this one.
yes, that one. I have it. Right here. So, looks like this. Trisha will find it. Remember what it looks like, Trisha? Like this?
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So what this document has is a January 2024 and January 2025. And then it has all the grade levels down the side. And it shows what our 4K was in 2024 and what it is in 2025. So 4K 80, and it goes to 82. K 81, 76. 192, 86. And then you can see in the furthest column, it's the difference between the two. Thank you, Trisha. So, no, so again, I'm comparing it as if we were configured the same last year. Remember, we weren't. So we had different amounts. We had 5th grade was at the intermediate and 2nd grade was at the elementary. So you can see where we were 1434 in January last year and then 1414. So a difference of 20 students. But there are some key components to notice here. So in the top in green, I call it the graduation effect. At the annual meeting, I talked about the graduation effect. So when you look there, you see that we have 128 seniors graduating, and we have 82 4Kers. So automatically, when we start next year, we're at a deficit of 46. But along with that, looking at the 46 times 11,650 per student, that's a $535,000, almost $36,000 decrease that we get in funding. So then if you'll stay on this journey with me, now look at the difference from 24 to 25. There is not a glaring spot where we're gonna reduce 5 teachers because of this reduction, because each teacher is worth about $100,000 when you do it in personnel budget, right, the 80% of our budget. So this is what makes it really, really challenging, right, to say, okay, declining enrollment, okay, we're gonna take out $535,000 of operation in a year. And that's the change that's just gonna happen. The other thing to notice, for those of you who've been around a long time like I have, 4K 8, we have 3 grade levels that are over 100 students. In my time, the smallest I ever had when I was a principal was 121. And I've only been out of that role for, I don't know, 8 years, 9 years. I think that's everything, it's probably 20, but no. But I just think that's really, really important. And we do look at, where did those kids go? And the majority of the kids move out of the district, or they choose a different option, right? But when you look, there's not a pattern. And the other crazy part, if you wanna say like, how did that happen? Look at how many seniors we added. 9 seniors.
Was there a trend with those?
They were looking for a new start. And remember, we have 162 open enrollment families that choose us to come here. So there's that piece too. But I just think it's super important when we talk January to January, like this is the work that the leadership team, we went through this today and we talked about it, and then we desegregated by how many teachers do we have teaching at each grade level and what does this look like and how are we gonna move forward. So we do that annually anyway, whether there's a deficit or not, because that's good practice and being good stewards.
How does OVA fit into this?
They're part of these numbers.
Okay.
Yeah, good question, thank you for asking that. Any questions on that? Okay, so if you go back to the,
Second Friday?
yes, the second Friday in January, not third Friday like September, second Friday in January. That's what we need to,
Take action.
yes.
Well, I will make a motion to approve the second Friday in January. Second by Osceola. Any further discussion? Thank you for the additional information on it. I think it's helpful to see. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed be nay. That is approved. Item 6, improving our instructional strategies, supporting student learning. A is approved special education open enrollment availability for 2025-2026.
And we looked at this already at the meeting, the conversation. So essentially based on the weighted scales and all the pieces and parts that go with special ed, we would recommend that we are closed in all buildings and all grade levels.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Kaisa. Second by Brooke. Lloyd. Kids get busy when they're super. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Opposed would be nay. That is approved. Although I typically don't talk about myself. Item B is approve regular education open enrollment availability for 25-26.
Again, we talked through this a little bit, so the recommendation would be that we would remain open at all grade levels. And like to Jan's point when she brought it up, like would we ever be in a position where we might have to hire a new staff member for an open enrolled students? And the answer is, it always could happen, and we need to be very aware. And then also, long-term impact, if the student open enrolls in 4K, do they then stay through the whole program?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Kaisa. Second by Corey. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Opposed would be nay. That is approved. Item 7, aligning, developing, and supporting our staff. Item A is review employee compensation for 25-26.
Again, a familiar document that you guys have seen. We usually start out with this document, talk about a couple different potential percentage increases across the district. And then once we get, more clear direction from the board, we'll move in towards the salary schedules, to show the board for review. So we have chosen based off of CPI, which as of January 1st is 2.95%. We have based our potential increases around that. So you can see 2, 2.5, and 3%. And then the different cost scenarios with each of those. And when we say cost scenarios, we include that WRS percentage, what the increase would be on the FICA, the life, and the long-term disability. So you can see at 2%, we'd be looking at about 293,000, 2.5%, 366,000, and then at 3%, 439,000.
The 2%, right, I'm sorry, the 2% is what is built into the Baird model, when we did the forecast model.
The difference between going from 2 to 2.5 and 3 is about $73,000 as you move over on those columns. Not looking for any sort of action tonight, just asking for to review this and then come back for more guidance.
Question, I should have probably thought of this ahead of time, so I apologize, but if we move forward with the health savings contribution, where would that show up in here? It doesn't show up in here. Okay.
This is salary.
So that's in addition to these increases?
It wouldn't be, this is salary. So, like, as you can see, health insurance and dental insurance and those types of insurances aren't on here, so this is strictly salary. And then, as your salary increases, right, you have a couple of different lines that are gonna increase with that because they're percentage based. So your retirement's a percentage based, so as you raise the salaries, your portion of that percentage is gonna go up. So that's why they're included on here in the WRS and the right to LTD.
And the $110,000 increase that we talked about would come out of the fund balance that is self-insured. So it's not in addition to this, it's money that we have there.
That was my assumption, but I just wanted to make sure.
I had to ask the same question.
Okay. And the ones that are highlighted in red are the ones that are unchanging.
They're generally fixed, fixed costs that we have. Obviously, the board salary is set, so we know that's going to be sub costs. It's always, we don't necessarily know what that's going to look like. It depends on obviously who's coming in and out of the district that year, seasonal, for those driver's salaries, and projected late movements. We're always very conservative on those ones with sub costs. We probably budget a little higher than necessary.
Not an action item, so any other further questions, otherwise we'll plan to bring it back, further meetings.
Yeah, is there any
Do you have
additional information that you feel like you need? More scenarios, I guess I should say.
I think the only other thing would be helpful is the Baird with these built in. It's not that big of a change, but maybe just getting the 3% thrown in there, we can figure the 2.5 would be.
Yeah, it's 73,000.
Okay, sure, that's
Yep.
fair.
Yep, so as you move across, so then if you went all the way to the you'd add about 173,000 times 2, so.
47.
That would be the addition to it, but yes, we can project those out, but simple math. Sure.
So you pulled the CPI rate as of January?
We use, so it's a 6-month lag. So on January 1st, they show July 1st, but July 1st is our fiscal year, so that's the number that we use. So January 1st number reflects back to July 1st, which is 2.95%. It has come down, we've been watching it, in June, I think it was at 3.03%. And it jumped down to 2.95%.
Well, I know that's Social Security for many people, ended at that 2.5%. That's what Social Security went up for people, so, that's why I was wondering, and I'm assuming they told theirs probably in October, because those announcements were in November or something, so. So if they've been going down, that makes sense.
Well, keep looking at it, keep it in front of your thoughts, and let Shannon and Becky know anything else we need to make an informed decision. Anything else on this item? Alright, Item B is review and approve debt prepayment.
Again, something that we've been talking about, we set the stage for this at the annual meeting when the board approved the levy. That levy included, that additional debt payment within Fund 39. So you can see here, this is just a summary that we have that additional little over $1 million. We're looking to make that prepayment in May. Making that prepayment will save the district about $66,000 in future interest costs. So tonight we are actually, we need about a month because we do have to have some legal verbiage that is created for that prepayment. So we'd be looking for approval in that February, March area, and then we'll go ahead and make that payment on the same schedule that we make our normal debt payments. And if you scroll down, they provided us with a updated, and you guys have seen these charts. This is the updated, what it would look like and what those savings would be making that debt payment.
And there's not a ton of it for prepayment.
Nope, since we are a prepayment, there's two different types. There's defeasance and there's a prepayment. We're in prepayment because we're not defeasance anymore. Being defeasance saves a lot in attorney fees. It's just that prepayment.
Because we're callable.
Callable.
I learned that on my second. Say it out loud.
Nice job.
And also we have to use of them to do this, like that was the whole.
This isn't something that I can go ahead and say, here, go ahead and make this payment. We do have to have that legal work done, documents done, and go ahead and make it.
Or what's your wishes here?
So we'll save 66, but it'll cost us 900 to have it all done.
Yep.
I'll make the motion, go ahead with it.
Motion by Jan, second by Corey. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Those would be nay. That is approved. Item C, review and approve grant procedural manual.
This is something that actually came out of the audit. This is one of the things that and I had talked about. The last time that the board had seen this was in 2017, I believe was the last we done it. It's just, again, one of those things that she was talking about, shoring up some loose ends. The board should probably approve these every 3 years. So you'll see it again, or you see it now, see it again in 3 years. It's basically a guideline for how we use our federal funds, how we take the money in, the responsibility of the business manager, the responsibility of the district office, how we then are allowed to spend that money, internal control procedures, other items like that. What the board's role isn't. Board's role in approving those funds and the spending of those funds. Again, just something that has been recommended by the auditor for approval and updating.
What's your wishes?
Questions on that? I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Kaisa, second by Corey. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Opposed would be nay. That is approved. Item D is discussion on operational facilities for 25, 26, and beyond.
Okay, once a teacher, always a teacher, right? So slideshow is. It's not clicking, so I'm trying. Look. There we go. It was me, I'm sorry. Okay, oh, you can go ahead and click it. Yeah, there we go, perfect. Where we always are, where we start. I like y'all looking at yourselves, so that's positive. But again, it's our mission, our vision, our core values, and our strategies. This is our focus.
Talking about the forecasting model, this is the document that we've been showing repeatedly, and you can see where we have that calculated deficit spending this year, and then how that's forecasted out for 25, 26 and beyond, what that looks like for the fund balance moving forward. And just a little bit of a review of what is fund balance. I know that a lot of times
You can click, sure, there's a bunch of things that need to come in individually.
there is that common misconception that it is cash in the bank. It's not. It's made up of assets and liabilities. Right now, we have that deficit. You saw that on the previous slide. Last spring, we recognized that obviously, and we did the reduction of that $1.3 million in spring of 2024. Looking forward to 25-26, it's looking to be about $1.5 million, and then you guys could tell from that their model that is in red going forward. One thing to note about that $1.3 million is that it, I think a lot of people want to see that as a glaring, when you look at the financial statements, you're going to see there's the $1.3 million, and that's just not how it works, right, in the budgeting process. But we removed that $1.3 million, but you also have to take into consideration that we had utilities increase at 4%. We gave staff increases last year. So we reduced the $1.3 million, but there's not just a line within our budget that says there's the $1.3 million. So again, it is spread out amongst that, but you have to layer back in the ongoing costs that you have. This is a sheet that's a little bit of an expansion of the document that Becky and I had showed you. You guys have this in your packets too. We had a modified version of this at the last board meeting. These are some options to look at for the board in terms of what we are looking at going forward for 25-26. We have different scenarios for reductions, how that corresponds to fund balance, and then the percentage of fund balance. We have put out a $500,000, $800,000, $1 million, and $2 million reduction dollar amounts for the board to consider. You can see then how that affects that fund balance going forward. So we will be down to 10%, or we would be at 20%. Current policy is between 20 and 30%. I did have a expanded conversation with the auditor this afternoon before they did the presentation. We talked about policy change, and what that would look like from an auditing standpoint. And it's really a guideline. My biggest question was, if we don't change the policy and we fall below the fund balance, what does that look like in terms of audit findings? There's no audit findings. It's just a note within the audit report to say this year you were either below it or above it. They'll even put it in if you're above fund balance. You could see from 2 years ago, I think we were above the 30%, so that would have been a footnote. She said there's probably not the need to change the policy. Just be cognizant of where you are in that fund balance. You can see the GFAO says 16.6%, so we have a little bit before we reach that threshold. You want to click to the next slide. Just some things that, I'm sorry, can you go back one more? That's not all. Why it is not good to use fund balance for recurring operational costs. We're aware of it, right? We know that. We know we're deficit spending. We know that it's not ideal. These are the reasons why. The ongoing costs don't go away. It's meant to be a short-term solution, not a long-term fix. If we have a catastrophic need, a boiler goes down, pipes freeze, that would be, particularly if we had to go out and find some sort of borrowing power for those needs. They look at your fund balance, and then again, it can affect the bond ratings. And she referenced the bond ratings, I believe, or the bond percentages on the audit.
And then, so the question, right, some important facts to think about as we talk about how do we move forward. Because none of this is a surprise. I don't think any of us are shocked. We've been talking about it, but it's the what now. We don't know what the state's gonna do. Are they gonna fund special ed 60%? That would help out Osceola a whole bunch. Like last thing we talked about, the 1.8 million transfer is a big deal. And the fact that we've been making those transfers over the years would show our community that that's a huge impact on the budget. And this is a federally required program, and we need these kids to have this support. We have timelines based on state statutes. So this isn't something we can put off and not talk about and wait for the state budget to be finalized, because that might be July. That has also been in October in our time. Or we can, that's what those different scenarios, there's a scenario that says if we do nothing, where we'll be. I think it's really important to understand, like as a team, we've been staying true to our goal. We always evaluate district operations and identify opportunities to enhance safety, but also to be physically responsible. And also keeping in mind the excellence in academic achievement for all of our kiddos. So we make shifts and be auto-responsive in doing reductions, like attrition would be an example. If somebody leaves, the conversation happens every single time. Can this position not exist any longer? And if it did, how's it gonna impact all of the other pieces? So again, that's happening on a regular basis with all the leadership team. We just had a conversation at the table today about, okay, so if this happens, what about this? What about this? How do we work together as a team? So ultimately, the question that needs to be answered soonish is, how much in dollars would we like to reduce?
Like,
Well, yeah. And whatever conversation you would like to offer us as guidance. as a team. I did that on purpose for, you saying my bullets don't match?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
I thought there was a bug and it was the mouse moving.
Okay.
But now I'm gonna notice that your bullets don't match.
but now it's hideous.
Well, as someone who has sat here at the table while we've been in this spot before, can't think of, I have to compare and contrast, cause that's the kind of person that I am as to the ways that we've done this before and the way it's been perceived in the community and the way it's been perceived among the staff and the students. And I think that, what I've learned in this role is what we need to get to is a dollar amount. And then we need to watch the magic that happens in the admin team and what solutions you can come up with. We can get lost in those details and we can start mentioning programs and I mean, look at this number, we can go down one section here or change this class size, but I'm not the educational expert sitting at this table. And I hate to say, here you go. The sheer reality is that what you need from us is a driving force on a target of some dollars. And I think any way we shake it, it's gonna be a gamble. It just is. We need to make the most educated gamble we can, because we know that the state is going to do something, but it could be nothing. Or it could be up to 1.8 million in special ed, which would give us the moon and we would come out back to par. So, that is the task before us, is to figure out where we land in there. We do nothing, we do too much, and recognizing, I'm gonna say this right off the bat, is that our students are the ones that pay the ultimate price for it. And it affects their learning, and it affects their everyday. So the ways that we've done it in the past is we've all thought of things we can look at, and we've all thought of things that we need to stay away from. Wasn't perceived favorably in the community. I think as I'm sitting right now, I can recognize the work that's been done to get, you know, the 1.3 million reduction last year was felt, and to know that if we go into additional cuts, it's going to be additionally felt. To me, as we start looking at cuts and reductions and realignment and whatever other terms you want to throw in it, I think it needs to be a broad scope, because everything brings value to our students, from the arts to sports to extracurriculars to class sizes. It all has an impact, and so I think it needs to all be looked at, and I think unfortunately for K-12. I feel like I said a lot of words and said nothing at the same time, so I apologize, but that's where I'm sitting. What I don't want is a list on that board that then people scrutinize and look at and then say, well, you didn't do this and you said you were going to, or this teacher comes out and this program comes out and this, because you can't cut this and you can't touch that. That isn't good for anyone. So how you get from dollar amount to end result is, I don't know.
I don't want that list either.
I don't want
But I
that.
also want to know, people to know that we're looking at every single option on the table.
Correct.
So I'm struck, that's hard for me.
Big part of it is, I know, like, ideally we have where we wanna see our class sizes at. But then at the end of the day, if, with our budget, sometimes we might have to go over that class size. You know, and I hear the talk of like, you know, other options that families have out there. Some of these families are going to these places because of the smaller class sizes. Well, but some of those other places also get to pick and choose who goes there. And we have to house special ed kids, which is why, a huge reason why we are in the deficit we are in is some of that funds. Where other schools, they don't have to take special ed kids. We have to. And by God, I would never turn a special ed kid down. Never, ever. So I'm just saying, like, some of the reasons why we are in debt are other things other schools don't even have to worry about. But yeah, it's like, so I love seeing our class sizes, but then I look at class sizes at other districts and I'm like, oh my God, like they're like double. And honestly, those numbers you wouldn't want, like, 'cause we do pride ourselves in trying to get the most out of our kids, try to get the highest test scores that we can. But stats also show the higher the class size, the worse that those numbers can be. You know,
But we have to do something.
I know we have to, but that's the thing, like, so that's why I say that has to also be on the table. Like, we try to avoid that, getting the class size over like 19 or 20 or whatever, but that's something we can't just now say is untouchable. I don't like any of it, but I think everything has to kind of just be looked at.
I think nothing's untouchable.
Right.
But we also knew that we either went to operational referendum.
Yeah.
Or we were faced with this.
Yeah.
Jennifer?
Do not have anything to add that Cory and Ryan.
Do you have anything to add?
No, I'm just like, I don't have anything else to add. I mean, everything's on the table. And you just even look, like Becky presented, the number of kids graduating, projected 4K, that's 500 and some right there. And
But you add another 9 seniors and boy, that changes a little bit too. I mean, you don't know, that's the thing, you don't know,
you don't, yeah.
right? I
And
didn't mean to interrupt you,
births
but.
across the state are down, so, I mean, that 80-some 4K seems to be kind of the ballpark number right now.
And if the governor's proposal goes through, which it never will, but if it did, we wouldn't even have this conversation. We wouldn't have the funds we would need, most likely based off of the numbers that he wants to give public schools. But then if we go the other side, when it comes to public schools, we're gonna need a lot. So I hope those two sides can come to something that gives us some adequate, but
I feel we've had this conversation.
it is every year, that's the thing, you just hope that they can come to some agreement where that special, like the key one is that special ed number. It has to go up from that 33%. If it doesn't, yes.
What makes me worry is what the president has been doing this last couple of days, cutting federal funding. That's our special ed, some of our special ed money, unfortunately, and that makes me nervous. Regardless if the state gives us more, we still get federal funding, and that we could see that decrease or go away, and that 1.8 could be a lot higher. But also looking at that.
So isn't that great? Like, whatever we come up with for a number, it could be way off because of everything that we're just saying.
It's a gamble.
It is.
What I captured from what you said, or what you all said, I think, so see if this is an accurate reflection, is to have the least impact on students, to have a broad scope, to look at all things, including all departments, because a lot of the reductions last year came from the learning side of the district. And I think that that's very important to say, that there's no list. It's a matter of how are we best going to do this? That there's nothing that's untouchable and everything's on the table. Because, right, then what I do is then I come back to the leadership team and say, okay, here's our directive. want us to get to.
So I'm in favor of leaning more towards the middle of the road, personally, speaking as an individual. Because I do think that there is going to be some wiggle room from the state. That's how I feel. I don't think it's gonna be the full 1.8 million. That is, you know, special ed reimbursement or things like that. I would be more in favor of saying the 500,000 mark. That would leave us at a percentage of fund balance at about 23%. So still within our policy, getting down towards the lower end, but knowing that if the state doesn't come through, we're having a much harder conversation the following year. And I think as much as the educators and support staff and everyone felt the 1.3 million last year, it needs to be a little bit more on the other side of education like you captured.
I hate to use the word hope when it comes to government, but I do hope that, I do have some hope, because every year there's talk about lack of money coming to the public schools, but man, it's the loudest it's ever been. And at some point, like, I always feel like when things build louder and louder and louder for reasonable things, it's finally heard. And so that's why I have some hope for this one. I'm on that same number as you with the 500,000. I've been wrong a million times in my life. I don't think the word hope though. But I really do. Like, I mean, another thing is being down at that in Milwaukee here. It was all about money. Like, the voices are speaking. They have to be hearing it. You can't keep ignoring this as much as we have been. So that's why I'm with that.
I mean, even people like the districts in Milwaukee are saying to their rural districts now, how are you doing this?
Yeah.
Everyone's.
Well, and this is, again, it's the broken system, because essentially if you wanna have really great schools, you have to increase your property taxes. You have to go to the voting booth and say, yes, I wanna pay more money in property taxes. And that's not how the system was built.
No.
But because the system is from here to here, and it's not an excuse, it's the truth. That's broken. And so then now in the communities around the state rallied and said, yeah, last, in November, how many referendums passed? I mean, they said, we are gonna increase our property taxes to ensure our public school stays in our community and delivers whatever they expect of, right, their school to deliver. It's just, it almost feels corrupt to say that. That's what public education has become. It is, you have to literally vote to increase this, to have a system in which it's desirable, where people want to bring their children, because you want your enrollment to stabilize at least at some level.
I think, the other takeaway too is, what percentage of our budget is staff salary and benefits? It's a large portion. Yeah, I was gonna say 80, so I knew it was somewhere in there. The one thing that we haven't considered is not giving a pay increase, and that would be for me the one thing that I would not be in favor of doing. I understand it seems like a very easy thing to say, but I think to me, it's one of my non-negotiables myself, is 2.5, 3% doesn't seem like enough. It'll never be enough, but I'm not in favor of going to a 0 either. It's just not something I want to see.
I'm glad you said that, because I feel the same way.
And you haven't mentioned it. You didn't even bring it forward. So, but it does need to be mentioned, because you haven't brought it forward. That is, for me, is a non-negotiable. So.
I would say yes with an exclamation point in all capital letters. Yeah. If we are sitting here saying we're in the situation that we're in because inflation hasn't matched for education, we can't ask our high quality educators to accept less than that.
That is off the table.
Yeah.
There's one.
I think it's important too, just to recognize, I know all the work management, leadership, administration, whatever you wanna call, is doing behind the scenes to find the least catastrophic impact to our kids.
And there
But
are
you don't
people,
see it right here at this table right now.
but there are people who will say, make it hurt,
That
and
is
I'm
true.
not, and then who loses?
Mhm.
The kids,
The kids.
right? So that's not who I am as a leader, so I need you to know that.
That's also up to you.
Making it hurt, we will build with our community and have conversations, and have opportunities for people to learn before we put kids on purpose.
What do you three think for a dollar amount to target, to start?
I think we look at that 500 and see where that leads us.
That was my input.
I looked at all of them, so I looked at that and then the impact on our, what would happen with our fund balance. And then it only be like a percent difference from each one. I originally was thinking like maybe the middle of the 800, but the 500 is okay too. Because the difference between those three isn't much different on the fund balance percent. But where it really gets tricky is the 26-27 school year. So it's like, do we cut more in 25-26? So it's not such a big thing in 26-27. So I wasn't just looking at 1 year, I was looking out.
And I did the similar to looking back, you know, that was
Right.
another, yep.
It's hard to look at that second year, isn't it?
It is, and it's like, do
But
you,
it's there.
That's why it's there.
or do you plan for more and watch where the state budget comes in, and if we get more money, then we don't have to cut as deep. It's harder to go the other way, plan only for the 500, and if you have to cut more, where you on that once school starts. That's where I'm at.
Jan, Vicky, what's your thoughts of where we've landed?
The conservative maybe would say 800,000 would make me comfortable, but we can make it 500,000 work. It's the second year that this works in. But we hope that there's gonna be some, I think for us, I think the special education piece, also for us, that low revenue ceiling would be a big deal. If we went to 12.6 or even 12.3, that's what we talked about. That's a dollar amount for us. On the revenue side, of course, that's unfortunately the tax base, so that would do affect that mill rate and those taxes, but that would be a big impact for our revenues.
As we lean into our fund balance, you know, when you talk about if something catastrophic happens, we have lesser ability to make those repairs. There is things built into the state statutes that give us the right to.
We have up to $1 million borrowing authority without having to go to referendum.
Okay.
There are some things that we have to do to get to that point, some timelines that we would have to hit and, from the public of that, but we do have the ability to borrow if we have to. The board approves every year at the annual meeting, the line of credit. The discussion might be, right now it's at 1.5 million. Maybe the discussion is increasing that in case we ever had to have some sort of replacement of something. Of course, it's not gonna get you a roof, right? But it is gonna help if a boiler does break down or pipe squeeze.
And you say timeline, I'm sure it's not a speedy timeline, and that's,
It's actually not bad.
Okay.
I have to go back here. I think it's a 30-day notice that we have to put in, if we're gonna do the borrowing authority, up to $1 million.
Cause you plan for the worst and hope for the best, right? That's the word, so.
And there's a stipulation on what that $1 million would have to be used for, right? I mean,
Does it get paid back then the next year?
You could take it and borrow it out, just like your structure, I think it's not over the course of 20 years, but you can do within 10 years, it becomes Fund 38. You have Fund 38 which is inside of revenue, and outside of revenue unit. So it becomes part of that structure when we go to pay it back.
Alright. Anything else on this item? Certainly not gonna be the last time for us.
And, right, this conversation needed to happen before actual, okay, what's the plan, how are we gonna do this? How do we get feedback from staff? How do we get feedback from community? How do we do those things? So there's some communication planning that will now happen with the idea of the target, and what I wrote down was anywhere between 500,000 and 800,000. But I also reminding myself, right, that we're also gonna make sure that we're gonna try to take care of students, but also that we're looking everywhere, and where do we not see, and what's practical and reasonable.
Is there a rock or something that has, oh look, there's $800,000.
A tree.
A tree?
I could sell that for 2,000.
Yeah. Third thing off the table, sorry, Cory.
And then next, as part of this agenda item, right, is
Oh,
facilities
yeah.
planning.
Great.
See all my slides? This is it. It's just discussion on moving forward. And I honestly have, just like y'all, right? You just go, okay, how do we wanna do facilities planning? What do we want it to look like? What do we want it to sound like? Do we need to get through the operational stuff and then bring it back in February? How do we want to roll forward?
The next time we could bring forward a referendum would be
April next year.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I mean, because it's not like a spreadsheet like this, right? I mean, there are all kinds of options, right? Yes, we're declining enrollment. Do y'all wanna move 8th grade into high school? Probably not, okay? So if we don't do that, what does that look like? If, when you look at projection forward by grade level, in 4 years, we're gonna get about 400 kids at high school. That's a very different high school than what we're used to in this room. So, I mean, we are looking, we're having conversations, you're thinking staffing, but also space. And what does space look like? What does that usually look like? What are your hopes, dreams, desires as far as, are we saying, throw a new roof on the 1962 section of that building and keep it rocking with 3 grades? Are we saying, hey, do we look at 3 buildings and then talk about when this community starts growing again? I don't know, right? There's land up at the top of the hill. Are we back to the 3 buildings versus what is it do we need? In our last plan, we had another gym and another library. That was gonna be beautiful. I love libraries. But if those came out of the plan, what does that look like? Because we don't just need 15 classrooms. We've had that conversation. We need space for people and students and special ed and special services. So it's not like you can just throw 15 classrooms on the intermediate school and say.
It's not just a head count and how much.
No.
Which everyone, not everyone, but a lot of people think it's just that simple.
Right.
It is not that simple. If it was, we would just go into 3 buildings.
Right.
It's not that simple. It's a lawsuit because of special ed spacing that we're not providing. There's many other things that can come into play, right?
So I don't know how we want to begin the discussion of going back in time and getting plans A through G. And then G2 and 1. Jan's shaking her head no, thank you. And again, maybe you just need some time to resonate, because I know that this part has been heavy on our hearts and minds first. And long-range planning, I mean, the idea of looking at what else is out there that we know that's coming. Yes, we want to be responsible stewards, but we're saying we're going to a deficit by paying our people and the supplies in school, planning for the next roof at the intermediate school. We aren't storing that money somewhere secretly and saying that it's gonna be here when we need it, and we could do that in the 2000s. Like, I sat in this room and watched what we could do. We added Spanish K-12. It was a different time and a different place. I thought it was really cool to be at this table. at that
Sounds really
point.
fun, actually.
Right, but that's not who we are right now.
What is the current state of our other buildings? Have we looked at that?
Yeah, we have a long-term planning chart, and Hunter and Bob have collaborated with Shannon a lot on it, and it's actually really well designed with a green. This is all within reasonable use. Yellow, we need to look at it, and red, it needs to be replaced. And things like the generators have been red for 6, 7, 8 years. So that's why we did the FEMA grant, which is now our FEMA collaboration. So can we start applying for grants over here to replace generators, perhaps? So trying to do some things like that. But yes, to answer your question, we've added technology on there and also materials. Because we need to know when's the next big purchase. When you buy K-5 ELA materials, it's a $200,000 purchase. That's stuff we have to plan for. And when you lose 40 kids for $500,000, that money goes away really fast. So I answered that in 3 different ways. Yes, we've looked at it and we're planning.
I feel like the facilities planning has been the worst roller coaster ever. This is just me speaking freely, because I've had moments where I'm like, we're gonna get this done. And then I've had moments of, this is never happening. And then, you know, and I don't know the right answer right now. And I've had those moments where I've been like, nope, this is the ticket, this is the way we go. And every time I think we're getting closer, it feels like there's more and more variables added in.
It's easy to say, let's wait to talk about it, but they also go hand in hand.
Correct. And I have such a hard time thinking about facilities when operational is on the table. Boy, I've sat at this table and had that exact conversation before. But I also know that building's not getting any newer, it's not getting any cheaper. The projects aren't getting any cheaper as we move on. The tax impact isn't becoming any smaller.
Sorry to interrupt you for a second. It was interesting at one of the sessions that Shannon and I were at, one of the bond buyer council guys was like, he had that sheet that shows all the interest rates, and he's like, I just need you to know, he's holding it up, he's like, yep, interest rates have gone up, but they've been historically low. The people who borrowed money over here, yeah, they are looking at you over here saying, you better borrow now. And he's like, I need you to tell all of your boards, I'm not gonna be able to quote him, but I should just record him, he's like, that it's not gonna get cheaper, it's gonna get more expensive. Make sure that everybody who's involved in the system is reminded of that, because even though it seems like interest, they are still historically low when you look at a 50-year snapshot of where we've been and where we've borrowed.
I think that I'm hearing is going to let us do on this one a little bit longer.
So much of our discussion has been in elementary school, and it just makes me wonder, like, what are we missing? Are there other options that we should be looking at that we haven't? I don't know what they are,
Helpful.
but
Helpful.
just need more time.
And the last piece that I put up here is just, how do we best utilize this time? It is become apparent to me in this role that people think when I talk to them, it's because I want them to vote yes on a referendum. Not that I want to build relationships and understand where they're coming from. So I feel like we have a window of opportunity to engage community in a way that's authentic. And also, it's gonna be really hard, because the other part of that is, now we're talking about reductions, right? That's a culture killer in a school district, and we know that. But I think that there's a communication plan that needs to come out of this, so that people are informed, engaged, aware, and that became clear in our survey results, right? People wanna know more about the finances. Because we do a really good job, social media wise, of putting all the great stories, the things that we're doing. But Facebook isn't a place where you say, here's the latest and greatest that we decided at a board meeting. Because that's not our intent.
But I think you're spot on, because as I think about this, it's like this decision is so much bigger than 5 board members. I don't really answer, but we need to hear more.
But also, the community needs to hear that we heard them.
Right.
Loud and clear.
We absolutely did. We didn't move forward, and that's why we're sitting here having these conversations, kind of looking at each other going, okay.
So let's work together.
Mhm.
So I'm moving forward.
So as Bob and Hunter finalize or finish up their plan for maintenance on the buildings, it'd be nice for them to share it with us so that we can see, because I'm sure, as Tracy said, as these other buildings are getting older too. I mean, it's hard to believe that the intermediate school is 20-some years old. That there's gonna be repairs there as well. So it's not just the elementary, but it's also our other buildings, and how are we gonna,
The more comprehensive, holistic approach.
so it'll be interesting to see their plan. But
Jan, do you know what year the middle school was born?
Hmm?
Do you know what year the middle school was born?
Was born.
1983, and I can tell you, there's more aches and aches every day, because I was also born in 83, so.
Rough year.
Rough year. Because you two paved the way.
But there is that long-term planning piece, and I know, my podcast boyfriends community, they did a 2075 plan. So they're talking about what they're gonna do all the way out to 2075. It seems like really far away, but again, people wanted a long-term plan, and I believe in a long-term plan. Does it mean that you're gonna have the money to do that when the time comes? Maybe not, but at least you thoughtfully said, here's where we're at now, here's where we know we're gonna need to be, 83, 96,
Well, I
1962.
mean, it seems hard to plan to in 3 years, but 75, is, like, who's gonna be here then?
Right.
50-year plan.
I was just pointing out that Corey would almost be 100. 2075. I wouldn't be that far behind, but.
They're gonna still have that painting on the wall.
And the planet throwing up somewhere.
We'll put that in your nursing home.
I would also be remiss if I didn't say that while our board meetings are a meeting in the public, with the public in attendance, I'm gonna challenge you all to think, help us see, help us think about other things. We're a majority of your elected officials as well. And so, our staff in the room, you have a chain of command. Sharon and Becky, there's things that you are thinking or seeing or hearing or have you looked at, or because we do this to represent you, to do what's best for our kids, so. All right, anybody else?
Do you need other things from us tonight for discussion?
Provided really good guidance.
I think you captured it well too, so I think we can have.
Cheers.
All right, well with that, the next committee board meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, February 12th, 2025 at 5 p.m. in the district office conference room. The next regular board meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, February 12th, 2025 at 6:30 p.m. in the district office conference room. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn from executive session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 1985 1C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibilities, individual contracts. Motion by Corey. Second by Jan. Roll call, Jan.
Yes.
Martin. Boyd.
Yeah.
Schmidt.
Yeah.
And myself is yes. We'll take 5, thank
That
you.
was
Mark.
That was great.
No, but I'm supposed to go alphabetical by last name.
You can see the hamster.
Yeah, you could.